Rachel Morgan adjusted the IV drip for the third time in 10 minutes. Her movements precise, economical, practiced. Room 314 was quiet, except for the steady beep of monitors and the soft breathing of Mrs. Patterson, recovering from gallbladder surgery. Nurse Morgan, Dr. Stevens's voice cut through the peace like a scalpel. Patient in Trauma Bay 2. Motorcycle accident. Rachel nodded, secured the IV and headed toward trauma. But the moment she stepped into the hallway, she knew it wasn't a motorcycle accident. Too much military brass moving too quickly. Too many serious faces. Too much controlled urgency that spoke of classified operations and national security. She pushed through the trauma bay doors and froze. Commander James Thompson lay on the gurney, blood seeping through field dressings, his face pale, but his eyes alert. Navy SEAL. She recognized the tactical gear, the bearing, the way he assessed threats, even while losing blood. But more than that, she recognized him. "Rachel," he whispered when he saw her, relief flooding his features. "Thank God you're here. Dr." Stevens looked up from his preliminary examination, irritated. "Nurse Morgan, I need you to prep for emergency surgery. This patient has multiple penetrating wounds, possible internal bleeding." "Doctor." Thompson's voice was weak but insistent. "I need Dr. Morgan to handle this." Stevens paused, confused. "I'm sorry. There's no Dr. Morgan here. This is Nurse Morgan, and I assure you I'm perfectly qualified. Get Dr. Rachel Morgan," Thompson repeated, his eyes locked on Rachel's face. "She's the only one who can save me." Rachel's blood ran cold. Her past, carefully buried, was about to surface. Dr. Stevens straightened, his expression shifting from confusion to condescension. "Commander Thompson, you've lost significant blood. You're confused. This is Nurse Morgan, an excellent nurse, but she's not qualified to perform surgery. I am Dr. Stevens, Chief of Trauma Surgery, and I will be handling your case." Thompson's hand shot out, gripping Stevens' wrist with surprising strength. "You don't understand. I need Dr. Rachel Morgan. She saved my life before." "There is no Dr. Morgan." Stevens pulled his hand free, frustrated. "Sir, you're delirious from blood loss. Nurse Morgan, please sedate the patient so we can proceed." "I don't need sedation," Thompson said, his eyes still on Rachel. "I need the surgeon who pulled shrapnel out of my chest in Afghanistan. I need the doctor who kept my entire team alive under fire. I need Dr. Rachel Morgan." Rachel felt the room's attention shift to her. The other nurses, the residents, even Stevens were staring. "Commander Thompson," she said quietly, "you need surgery immediately. Dr. Stevens is highly qualified." "No." Thompson's voice carried command authority despite his weakness. "Rachel, I know why you're here. I know what happened in Kabul. But right now, I need you to be who you really are, not who you're pretending to be." Stevens looked between them, his medical arrogance warring with growing confusion. What is he talking about? Rachel felt the weight of 3 years of careful deception threatening to crumble. She'd worked so hard to become invisible, to be just another nurse, to bury Dr. Rachel Morgan along with the guilt and trauma of that last mission. But Thompson was dying. She could see it in his vitals, in the way his blood pressure was dropping, in the subtle signs that civilian doctors might miss, but that she recognized from hundreds of battlefield triage decisions. "Dr. Stevens," she said carefully, "Commander Thompson requires immediate surgery. His injuries are more complex than they appear." "How could you possibly know that? You're a nurse." Rachel looked at Thompson, saw the plea in his eyes, the trust that said, "I know who you are. I need who you are." "Because," she said quietly, "those aren't just penetrating wounds. That's fragmentation pattern from an IED. And if I'm right, he has metal fragments near his heart that will kill him if they shift during standard surgical procedures." Stevens stared at her. "You can't possibly diagnose." "Nurse Morgan is right," Thompson said weakly. "IED in Kandahar 3 weeks ago. Fragments are still there, too dangerous to remove in the field." His eyes found Rachel's. "That's why I need the best combat surgeon the Navy ever had." The room went silent. Stevens looked at Rachel as if seeing her for the first time. "Combat surgeon?" Rachel closed her eyes. 3 years of hiding, about to end because a SEAL she'd saved couldn't let her hide anymore. When she opened them, Thompson was coding. "He's flatlining." The resident's voice cut through everything else. Rachel moved before thinking, her hands finding Thompson's pulse points, her mind switching into combat mode she'd tried to suppress for 3 years. "Start compressions," she ordered, then caught herself. "Dr. Stevens, just do it!" Stevens snapped, recognizing skill when he saw it. Rachel's hands moved with precision that made the nurses step back. These weren't the compressions of someone who'd learned CPR in basic training. These were the compressions of someone who'd done this under fire, with mortars exploding overhead, with no backup and no margin for error. 2 milligrams epinephrine, she said, then realized she was giving orders instead of following them. "I mean, Dr. Stevens, should we—" "Continue," Stevens said, his voice tight. He was watching her hands, her technique, the way she positioned Thompson's head for optimal airway. "How do you know to do that?" The monitor beeped. Thompson's heart rhythm returned. "Because I've done this before," Rachel said quietly. "Many times." Stevens studied her face. "Nurse Morgan, I need to ask you directly. What is your medical background?" Before Rachel could answer, Thompson's eyes fluttered open. He gripped her wrist. "Doc," he whispered, using the title that 3 years of working as a nurse hadn't erased from his memory. "The fragments. They've shifted. I can feel them." Rachel checked the monitors, saw the subtle changes that confirmed her worst fear. The metal fragments were moving toward his heart. Minutes, maybe less, before they punctured something vital. "Dr. Stevens," she said urgently. "He needs immediate surgery. Now." "I'm prepping OR3. No!" Rachel's voice carried an authority that made everyone freeze. "The fragments are shifting. Standard surgical positioning will kill him. He needs to remain exactly at this angle, with these precise support positions, or the metal will puncture his heart." "How can you possibly know that?" "Because I've seen this exact injury pattern 17 times. In Afghanistan, in Iraq, in places you've never been, and hope you never have to go." Rachel looked at Thompson, saw him fading fast. "Dr. Stevens, I'm asking you to trust me. Let me assist in this surgery. Let me position him correctly. Let me help save his life." "You're a nurse." "She's Dr. Rachel Morgan," Thompson gasped, his voice barely audible. "Navy SEAL combat surgeon. Saved 43 lives in active combat zones. Best trauma surgeon the military ever produced." His eyes found Stevens. "And right now, she's the only person in this hospital who can keep me alive." Stevens stared at Rachel. "Is that true?" Rachel met his gaze. 3 years of hiding. 3 years of guilt. 3 years of trying to forget who she used to be. But Thompson was dying, and she was still Dr. Rachel Morgan, whether she wanted to be or not. "Yes," she said quietly. "It's true." Eeng. The OR prep room buzzed with tension as Rachel scrubbed beside Dr. Stevens. Her hands moved with muscle memory, the ritual of surgical preparation as familiar as breathing, despite 3 years away from operating tables. "Dr. Morgan," Stevens said carefully, "I need to understand what I'm dealing with here. You've been working as a nurse in my hospital for 2 years. Your credentials show nursing school, not medical school. Deep cover medical background check would show nursing credentials," Rachel said, not looking up. "The rest is classified." "Classified by who?" "The United States Navy, the Department of Defense. People with more clearance than either of us want to deal with." She finished scrubbing, turned to face him. "Dr. Stevens, I understand your confusion. I understand your anger. But right now, Commander Thompson has minutes before those fragments shift enough to kill him. We can discuss my credentials later." Stevens studied her. "Those positioning requirements you mentioned. The specific angle, the support points. Fragment pattern from Russian-made IED, common in Afghanistan theater. Metal pieces are jagged, designed to cause maximum internal damage. Standard surgical positioning would create pressure that drives them deeper." Rachel's voice was clinical, professional. "I've removed these fragments 43 times. Lost patients twice. Both because we couldn't maintain proper positioning under field conditions." "Field conditions?" "Combat zones. Forward operating bases. Places where you operate in a tent with mortars landing outside, and no backup if things go wrong." Rachel met his eyes. "Dr. Stevens, I'm not trying to usurp your authority. I'm trying to save a patient's life using knowledge I wish I didn't have." Stevens was quiet for a moment. Then, "What do you need?" "Complete surgical control. This isn't a team operation. It's a delicate extraction that requires absolute precision. One wrong move, one tremor, 1 second of uncertainty, and he dies." Rachel paused. "I know that's not how civilian hospitals work. I know you're the chief surgeon, but this isn't civilian medicine. This is combat trauma, and I'm asking you to trust me to handle it." Through the OR window, they could see Thompson being prepped, his vitals declining steadily. "If I let you lead this surgery," Stevens said slowly, "and something goes wrong, if he dies, both our careers are over. If you don't let me lead this surgery, he dies anyway. At least this way he has a chance." Stevens looked at Thompson, at the monitors showing a man running out of time, at Rachel's steady hands and calm confidence. "What's your success rate with this type of extraction?" 95% under combat conditions. Should be higher in a controlled OR environment. And if you're wrong? If those aren't the fragments you think they are? Rachel was quiet for a moment. "Then I'm wrong. And a good man dies. And I live with that for the rest of my life. Just like I live with the 2 I couldn't save." Stevens saw something in her eyes then. The weight of command decisions. The burden of lives saved and lost. The cost of being responsible for impossible choices under impossible conditions. "Dr. Morgan," he said formally, "I'm asking you to take lead on this surgery. I'll assist." Rachel nodded. "Thank you." They entered the OR, where Thompson lay unconscious, his life measured in heartbeats and declining vital signs. "Scalpel," Rachel said, her voice steady. For the first time in 3 years, Dr. Rachel Morgan was exactly where she belonged, even if she'd spent 3 years trying to convince herself otherwise. The moment the scalpel touched Thompson's skin, everything else faded away. The OR, the watching nurses, Dr. Stevens' uncertainty, Rachel's guilt about the past, all of it disappeared, leaving only surgeon and patient and the mission to save a life. "Retractor," Rachel said, her voice calm. "Small Richardson." Her hands moved with precision that made the surgical team pause. This wasn't the technique of someone returning to surgery after years away. This was mastery, honed by experience most civilian doctors never faced. "Jesus," one of the residents whispered. "Look at that incision. Perfect. Clean. Minimal tissue damage. The kind of surgical approach that spoke of hundreds of operations performed under the worst possible conditions." "Suction," Rachel continued, exposing the surgical field. "There. Do you see it?" Stevens leaned closer, following her gaze. "The metal fragments? 3 pieces. 1 near the heart wall, 2 along the intercostal space. But look at the positioning." Rachel's voice took on a teaching tone. "They're not random. The blast pattern drove them in sequence, the largest piece first, the smaller ones following the pressure wave. Which means if we remove them in the wrong order, we'll destabilize the whole pattern. The remaining fragments will shift, and he'll bleed out before we can control it." "Doctor." Stevens stared at the surgical field. "I've never seen anything like this. Pray you never have to again." Rachel's hands moved to the first fragment, the smallest one, tucked against a rib. "This one first. It's acting as a pressure point for the others. Remove it carefully, and the larger pieces will settle into stable positions." She worked with movements that seemed almost casual, but required absolute precision. The fragment came free without disturbing surrounding tissue. "Remarkable," Stevens breathed. "How did you know?" "Experience. Too much experience." Rachel moved to the second fragment. "This one's trickier. It's resting against the lung lining. If it shifts wrong, he'll have a pneumothorax and we'll lose him." The room held its breath as she worked. This fragment was larger, irregularly shaped, designed to cause maximum damage, but Rachel's hands never wavered. "Got it." She placed the fragment in the specimen tray. Now the big one. The largest fragment sat near Thompson's heart, close enough that each heartbeat moved it slightly, close enough that one wrong move would puncture the cardiac wall. "Dr. Morgan," Stevens said quietly, "are you sure about this approach?" Rachel paused, looked at the monitors, at Thompson's vitals holding steady but weak. "I've done this exact extraction 27 times. Lost 1 patient because we didn't have proper lighting, another because mortar fire forced us to rush." She met Stevens' eyes. "In a controlled OR, with proper equipment and no one shooting at us, this should work." "Should?" "Will," Rachel corrected herself. "This will work." She positioned her instruments, found the exact angle needed to extract the fragment without disturbing the surrounding tissue. Her hands moved with the confidence of someone who'd made impossible decisions and lived with the consequences. The fragment slid free. Thompson's vitals strengthened immediately. Color returned to his face. The monitors showed a heart rhythm that was strong, steady, normal. "Unbelievable," Stevens said. "I've never seen surgical precision like that." Rachel began closing, her sutures perfect, her technique flawless. "You've never worked combat medicine, Dr. Stevens. When you have 30 seconds to save a life or watch a soldier die, you learn efficiency. Is that why you left? The military?" Rachel's hands paused for just a moment. "I left because sometimes, even when you do everything right, people still die. And sometimes the weight of saving everyone you can doesn't balance out the weight of losing the ones you can't." She finished closing. Thompson's vitals were strong, stable, better than they'd been since he arrived. "Surgery complete," Rachel announced. "Patient should recover fully." She stepped back from the table, and suddenly she wasn't Dr. Rachel Morgan anymore. She was just Nurse Morgan, who'd somehow performed a miracle she wasn't supposed to be capable of. Stevens looked at her with something like awe. "That was extraordinary. Your technique, your knowledge, was a one-time situation," Rachel interrupted. "Commander Thompson needed help I was qualified to provide. That's all. But your skills are in the past." Rachel began cleaning up, her movements automatic. "I'm a nurse now, Dr. Stevens. This was an exception." Stevens watched her, understanding dawning on his face. "You're not coming back to surgery, are you? Even after this?" Rachel met his eyes, and he saw the pain there, the guilt, the weight of decisions that had cost lives despite her best efforts. "Some doors, Doctor Stevens, close for good reasons, even when opening them might save lives." She left the OR, leaving Stevens to process what he'd witnessed, the most skilled surgery he'd ever seen, performed by a woman who was determined to walk away from it again. But as Rachel headed back to her nursing station, she didn't know that Commander Thompson was already awake, already asking for her, already planning to make sure she understood that some doors weren't meant to stay closed, especially when opening them could save so many more lives. "Perfeito! Vou criar-os, dar 5 capítulos finais com 450 palavras cada, mantendo a intensidade e revelando toda a verdade." Rachel was checking medications when Dr. Stevens found her 30 minutes later. His expression was complicated: confusion, respect, and something that looked like determination. "Nurse Morgan," he said, then corrected himself. "Dr. Morgan, we need to talk." "There's nothing to discuss," Rachel said without looking up. "Commander Thompson is stable. Surgery was successful. Case closed." "Case closed?" Stevens stepped closer. "Rachel, what I witnessed in that OR, that wasn't just good surgery. That was mastery, the kind of skill that takes decades to develop. It took 4 years of combat medicine and 43 emergency extractions under fire." Rachel finally looked at him. "And it cost more than you'll ever understand." "Then help me understand. Why are you working as a nurse when you're clearly one of the most skilled surgeons I've ever seen?" Rachel was quiet for a moment. "Because surgery means making life and death decisions, and I got tired of making the wrong ones." "Wrong ones?" "Kandahar, 3 years ago. Mass casualty event. IED hit a school. 47 children injured, 12 adults. I had to choose who to save first, who to save second, She stopped. 2 children died while I was saving others. 2 kids who might have lived if I'd made different choices." Stevens sat heavily. "Rachel, that's triage. It's impossible choices under impossible conditions. You saved lives. I lost lives too, and I decided I was done playing God." Rachel resumed her medication check. "Nursing is different. I help, I support, I care for patients, but I don't make the choices that determine who lives and who dies." "But you just did. With Thompson. That was different." "How?" Rachel's hands stilled. "Because he asked for me specifically. Because I was the only one who could help him. Because..." She trailed off. "Because you're still Dr. Rachel Morgan," Stevens finished. "Whether you want to be or not." Before Rachel could respond, her phone buzzed. Text message from unknown number. "Dr. Morgan, this is Commander Thompson. Thank you for saving my life. Again, we need to talk. There's something you need to know about Kandahar. Something that changes everything. JT." Rachel stared at the message. Kandahar. The mission that ended her surgical career. The children she couldn't save. "What is it?" Stevens asked. "My past," Rachel said quietly. "Apparently it's not finished with me yet." The phone buzzed again. "The children you think you failed to save? You didn't fail them. You were set up. Meet me in the hospital chapel in 1 hour. It's time you knew the truth." Rachel's hands trembled. "Set up?" What truth? Stevens read the message over her shoulder. Rachel, you have to go. You have to hear what he has to say. I can't relive that day. Maybe you won't have to. Maybe you'll finally understand it. 1 hour. The chapel. The truth about Kandahar. Rachel looked at Stevens, saw certainty in his eyes. Will you cover my patience? Go, he said simply. Find out who you really are. All of it. The hospital chapel was quiet, empty, except for Commander Thompson sitting in the front pew. He looked stronger. The color returned to his face, but his expression was grave. Rachel, he said when she entered. Thank you for coming. What truth, James? What are you talking about? She sat beside him, her voice tight. Those children died because I made wrong choices. Because I wasn't fast enough, skilled enough. No. Thompson turned to face her. Those children died because you were betrayed. By your own command structure. Rachel felt the world shift. What? The Kandahar mission was compromised from the start. Intelligence knew the school was going to be hit. They knew when, they knew how. And they sent you anyway. That's impossible. Why would... Because you were getting too good, too decorated, too visible. A female surgeon outperforming everyone, earning more commendations than male officers with twice your experience. Thompson's voice was bitter. Some people decided you needed to be humbled. Rachel stared at him. You're saying my own command set me up to fail? I'm saying they put you in an impossible situation knowing you'd blame yourself when people died. They wanted to break your confidence, make you question your abilities. Thompson pulled out a folder. Classified documents. Took me 3 years to get clearance to show you these. Rachel opened the folder, read the mission briefings, the intelligence reports that were never shared with her, the advance warnings about the school bombing that never reached her field hospital. My God, she whispered. They knew. They all knew. You had 30 minutes to save 47 people with supplies for maybe 20. You performed miracles that day, Rachel. You saved 45 lives with resources that should have saved maybe a dozen. Thompson's voice was firm. Those 2 children who died, they were already gone when they reached you. But you kept working anyway, because that's who you are. Rachel felt tears she'd held back for 3 years. But you could have done nothing different. Nothing better. Nothing more than you did. Thompson took her hands. Rachel, you're not just a good surgeon. You're the best combat surgeon the Navy ever produced. And they broke you because they were afraid of how good you were. The folder contained more documents. Commendations that were never processed. Recommendations for promotion that were buried. Evidence of a systematic effort to undermine her career. Why are you showing me this now? Because I need you to understand something. What you did today, saving my life, that's who you really are. Not the broken surgeon who blames herself for impossible choices. You're Dr. Rachel Morgan, who saves lives others can't save. Rachel looked at the evidence, at 3 years of guilt based on lies and manipulation. I don't know if I can go back to surgery, she said quietly. I'm not asking you to. I'm asking you to stop punishing yourself for crimes you didn't commit. Thompson stood. But I will say this. The world needs surgeons like you. Patients need doctors who can do the impossible. And hiding that gift because some cowards were threatened by your excellence? That's not justice, Rachel. That's just another tragedy. He left her alone in the chapel, with the truth she'd never known and a choice she'd never expected to face. Rachel Morgan, nurse, had been safe, quiet, hidden. Dr. Rachel Morgan had been extraordinary and dangerous to people who couldn't accept that. The question was, which person would she choose to be? Rachel found Dr. Stevens in his office 2 hours later, the folder of classified documents still in her hands. I read your message, he said without looking up. The truth about Kandahar. How are you processing it? I don't know yet. Rachel sat across from his desk. 3 years of guilt based on lies. 3 years of hiding from who I was because I thought I was a failure. And now I know I was set up. That those children died not because I wasn't good enough, but because people were afraid I was too good. Rachel opened the folder. Did you know that female surgeons in combat zones have higher success rates than male surgeons? Better outcomes, fewer complications, more innovative solutions under pressure? I didn't know that. Neither did I. But apparently, some people did, and they decided it was a problem that needed solving. Rachel's voice carried an edge she'd buried for 3 years. They wanted to break me, and they succeeded. Stevens leaned forward, But you're not broken now. No, Rachel said slowly. I'm angry. For the first time in 3 years, I'm not guilty. I'm furious. Good. Anger is better than guilt. Anger drives action. Rachel stood, walked to the window overlooking the surgical wing. Dr. Stevens, I want to ask you something, and I need you to be honest. Always. This hospital, do you have the resources for a specialized trauma program? Advanced combat casualty care for military personnel and high-risk civilian cases? Stevens sat back. Are you talking about coming back to surgery? I'm talking about doing what I was trained to do, what I'm better at than almost anyone in the country. Rachel turned to face him. Those techniques I used on Thompson, that's barely 10% of what I know. Combat medicine, advanced trauma surgery, emergency procedures that could save lives. Civilian hospitals lose every day. You want to establish a military trauma center here? I want to stop hiding. I want to use my skills where they matter. And I want to make sure that what happened to me, the sabotage, the cover-up, the systematic undermining of qualified doctors, doesn't happen to anyone else. Stevens was quiet for a moment. The board would need to approve a new program. We'd need additional resources, specialized equipment. I have contacts, military medical suppliers, Department of Defense grants, Navy medical liaisons. Rachel's voice grew stronger with each word. Dr. Stevens, I can bring expertise to this hospital that money can't buy, experience that medical schools can't teach, techniques that could revolutionize how we handle trauma cases. And you'd be willing to lead this program? Rachel thought about Commander Thompson, about the 43 lives she'd saved in combat, about the 2 children she'd blamed herself for losing. I'd be willing to be who I was always meant to be. Dr. Rachel Morgan, combat trauma surgeon. Not hiding anymore. Not apologizing for being good at what I do. Stevens smiled, the first genuine smile she'd seen from him. Dr. Morgan, how soon can you put together a proposal? Give me 72 hours. Done. He stood, extended his hand. Welcome back to surgery, Dr. Morgan. This hospital just got a lot more interesting. Rachel shook his hand, felt the familiar weight of surgical responsibility, the excitement of impossible challenges. For 3 years, she'd been Nurse Morgan, safe, quiet, invisible. But Rachel Morgan was back, and she had work to do. 3 weeks later, Rachel stood in her new office, watching through the window as the first official patient of the Advanced Combat Trauma Center was wheeled into OR 1. Marine Sergeant Williams, IED injuries from Syria, fragmentation pattern she recognized immediately. Dr. Stevens would assist, but Rachel would lead, the first surgery of her new position as Director of Combat Trauma Medicine. Dr. Morgan, her new assistant, Lieutenant Commander Sarah Chen, Navy Medical Liaison, appeared in the doorway. Patient is prepped. Team is ready. Thank you, Sarah. Rachel straightened her white coat, the first time she'd worn one in 3 years. Her name was embroidered clearly. Dr. Rachel Morgan, MD, Director, Combat Trauma Center. Doctor? Sarah hesitated. I wanted you to know. Word is spreading through military medical channels about what you're doing here. Combat surgeons who thought they were alone, who thought no one understood what they'd been through. They're asking for transfers, wanting to work with someone who gets it. Rachel nodded. Good. This program isn't just about saving lives. It's about supporting the people who save lives, making sure doctors like us don't get broken by the system we serve. Is that what happened to you? The system broke you? Rachel was quiet for a moment. The system tried to break me, but it turns out I'm harder to break than they thought. She headed toward the OR, where Sergeant Williams waited, where her team of military-experienced medical professionals was ready to do the impossible. Commander Thompson appeared in the hallway, walking slowly but steadily, fully recovered from his surgery. Dr. Morgan, he said, falling into step beside her. How does it feel? Like I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. Any regrets about leaving nursing behind? Rachel thought about it. Nursing taught me compassion. It reminded me that healing isn't just about technical skill. It's about caring for people when they're most vulnerable. She paused. I'll be a better surgeon because I was a nurse. And the guilt? About Kandahar? Gone. Replaced by determination to make sure other military medical personnel don't get sacrificed for politics. Rachel smiled grimly. The people who tried to break me, they created something they never expected. A surgeon who's not just skilled, but angry. Angry enough to fight back. They reached the OR doors. Thompson stopped. Rachel, when I said they didn't know who you were, I wasn't just talking about Dr. Stevens. I know. You were talking about me too. I didn't know who I was. Rachel looked through the window at her patient, at her team, at the life she was about to save. But I do now. She entered the OR where Sergeant Williams waited, where another impossible surgery needed someone who specialized in the impossible. Scalpel, Dr. Rachel Morgan said, her voice steady, confident, home. For 3 years, she'd hidden from who she was. But Dr. Rachel Morgan was done hiding, and the world was about to remember why they called her the best combat surgeon the Navy ever produced. 6 months later, Rachel's program had saved 47 military personnel and 12 high-risk civilian cases. The Advanced Combat Trauma Center was being studied by hospitals nationwide, and Rachel had been asked to consult on military medical policy. She stood in her office, reviewing cases, when Dr. Stevens knocked. "Rachel, there's someone here to see you. Says it's official Navy business." A woman in naval uniform entered. Captain Patricia Morrison, Chief of Naval Medical Operations. "Dr. Morgan," Captain Morrison said, "I'm here about Kandahar." Rachel's blood went cold. "Ma'am, the officers responsible for compromising your mission and sabotaging your career have been court-martialed. 3 were dismissed from service. 1 was sentenced to military prison." Morrison's expression was grim. "The Navy owes you an apology, Doctor, and an offer." "What kind of offer?" "Return to active duty. Full reinstatement of rank. Command of the Navy's new Advanced Combat Medical Division." Morrison handed her official documents. "Your choice of assignment, your choice of staff, complete autonomy to develop combat medical protocols." Rachel looked at the papers. Everything she'd lost, being offered back. "And if I decline? Then you continue doing exactly what you're doing here. With full Navy support, unlimited resources, and the gratitude of every service member whose life you've saved or will save." Rachel thought about her team, her patients, the program she'd built. "Captain Morrison, I appreciate the offer, but I think I'm exactly where I need to be." Morrison smiled. "I hoped you'd say that. The Navy needs advocates on the outside, Doctor. People who'll fight for military medical personnel from positions of civilian authority." After Morrison left, Rachel returned to her patient rounds. Room 314 held her latest case, Lieutenant Sarah Wilson, Army medic who'd been told she was too emotional for surgery after losing a patient in Afghanistan. "How are you feeling, Sarah?" Rachel asked. "Better. Still guilty, but better." Wilson looked at her. "Dr. Morgan, can I ask you something?" "Always. Do you think I'll ever be able to operate again without seeing that soldier I lost?" Rachel sat beside her bed. "Yes, but not because you'll forget him. Because you'll carry him with you, and let his memory make you a better surgeon. The patients we lose teach us as much as the ones we save. Is that what you did?" "After Kandahar? After Kandahar, I forgot who I was for 3 years. But that soldier you lost? Honor his memory by becoming the surgeon who saves the next one, and the one after that." Wilson nodded. "Thank you, Doctor." Rachel left the room, headed to OR 3 where another impossible case waited. Marine Captain Rodriguez. The same injuries that had nearly killed Commander Thompson. But this time, she wasn't hiding who she was. This time, she was exactly who she was meant to be. Dr. Rachel Morgan, combat trauma surgeon, the woman who turned her greatest failure into her greatest strength, and she was just getting started.